we will talk about the placenta. In the early weeks of the embryo, there are three spaces to remember. We have the yolk sac, the amniotic sac, and the chorionic sac. So let's revise this. What's this called? The yolk, and this here around the fetus, amnion, and the kind of the structure here around there, which will be the placenta in the future, is the chorion. And the chorion is the fetal part of the placenta. The maternal, so from the mother, part is known as the decidua basalis. So these chorionic villi are the functional units of the placenta. By the 9th week of development, the embryo looks like a little bit like a human, and the placenta has become also an endocrine organ, and it is secreting some hormones. Do you remember which ones? Yes, the two most obvious ones are estrogen and progesterone. They maintain pregnancy, and during the early weeks we also have the human chorionic, so as you can see, this is from the placenta, gonadotrophin hormone, and that is produced by the placenta after implantation, and it supports the function of the corpus luteum. That is only in the early weeks, because then the corpus luteum will become inactive. And we can see that because at the beginning, the human chorionic gonadotrophin is very high, so this is usually used as the hormone to detect pregnancy. And then we don't need it anymore. It's just gonna flatten down again. Progesterone will continue to rise, and also estrogen will continue to rise. So it produces two steroid hormones, the placenta. They are called estrogen and progesterone. Progesterone acts to maintain pregnancy by supporting the lining of the uterus, the womb, which provides the environment for the fetus and the placenta to grow. So what does progesterone do again? Yes, it provides and prevents, it provides a good environment for the fetus, and it prevents the shedding of its lining. So also similar to that which occurs at the end of the menstrual cycle, and this is not really good because this would result in pregnancy loss, and we don't want that. So progesterone also suppresses the ability of the muscular layer of the uterine wall to contract. We don't want any contractions, because contractions means labor. So this is important in preventing labor from occurring before the end of pregnancy. As you can see, progesterone will go up afterwards, and will. So then we have estrogens. Estrogen's levels rise towards the end of pregnancy. Estrogen acts to stimulate the growth of the uterus to accommodate the growing fetus, and allows the fetus to contract by countering the effect of progesterone. In this way, it prepares the uterus for labor. So estrogen also stimulates the growth and development of the mammary glands. These are glands that will produce milk in the breasts, and that is a preparation for breastfeeding. So let's try and recap that. So which two hormones do we need? Or which two hormones are produced by the placenta? Estrogen and progesterone. What does progesterone do? It prevents the shedding of this lining of the uterus. And what does estrogen do? Yes, it stimulates the growth of the uterus, and both are very, very helpful for the fetus to grow. So let's go back to our So again, this surrounding fluid sac is called, that is around the fetus. What's that called? The amnion. And this is part of the placenta. The amnion protects the embryo against mechanical shocks. The embryo is attached by the umbilical cord, and the placenta delivers nutrients and oxygen to the embryo. You will see that here. And removes wastes and carbon dioxide from the embryonic blood. So once again, the placenta delivers what? Nutrients and oxygen to the embryo, and it removes what? Wastes and carbon dioxide from the blood. It contains two, as you can see, umbilical arteries. So there are two. These arteries, and they carry blood from the fetus to the placenta, and only one umbilical vein that is carrying blood from the placenta to the fetus. The vein is bigger and gives us oxygen and nutrients. That's important for us. We need, the baby needs that, and hormones delivered to the baby. So we have one but big stream coming towards the baby, and two arteries that go away, and they take the wastes and the carbon dioxide with them. And the fetus depends on the placenta for its development. All exchanges with the uterus, with the mother, are made through the placenta. So at this time, the uterus enlarges to accommodate the developing fetus. As you can see here, it eventually pushes up. This is an MRI scan. It pushes up to the abdominal cavity and occupies most of this area. The abdominal organs push against the diaphragm muscle, causing the ribs to expand and the thorax to widen. During this time, the center of gravity of the mother moves, so that's why we think they're a little bit clumsy, also which may cause back aches. Believe me, they do. It is essential for the mother to practice good nutrition, eating high quality food, not just more food. In addition to the transfer of substances, the placenta has two other main functions. It can act as a barrier between the mother and the fetus, preventing some harmful substances in the blood of the mother from damaging the fetus. In addition to the transfer of substances, the placenta has two other main functions, as I said, and the mother should also avoid any harmful substances that could pass through the placenta into the fetal blood, such as alcohol, drugs, and nicotine. Because alcohol can cross the placental barrier. Generally speaking, the fetus is well protected, even though pregnancy creates an immunological paradox. Half of the fetus genes come from the father, so the fetus itself should be perceived as foreign. But rejection doesn't happen because the mother's body has immune suppressing mechanisms that allow the placenta to establish itself. And the placenta itself is a disc-shaped organ that starts as a single cell, you remember, and grows to like a 1-pound structure that nourishes and protects the growing fetus, has potent ways to block maternal cells, proteins, and most pathogens, viral or other, from crossing the maternal fetal barrier. The mature placenta has two halves. One that originates from the embryo and the other one from the mother's uterine tissue. So each side is filled with an integrate mesh of blood vessels to shuttle nutrients and oxygen from mom to growing fetus, and each harbors protections from pathogens, for example. But a few rare viruses can reach the fetus when pregnant. So if women are infected, that ends in a very tragic result. Because pathogens can trigger spontaneous abortions or preterm labor. These include the Zika virus, rubella, the virus that causes German measles, and cytomegalovirus, or CMV, which is actually not really harmful, but to the fetus it is. So how does this immune system, protect the placenta and the fetus? So the pregnant uterus is very unusual and very specialized. It produces immune chemicals known as cytokines. So these cytokines act like attractants. They call in so their immune cells to the uterus and to the mother's side of the placenta, and they will protect the fetus from infection. So they act like a police barrier. You can't have the usual groups of killer T cells, that we usually have for detecting and also killing the virus within the placenta, because they would also attack the placenta and the baby. So there is a sort of soft immune defense with these cytokines, and that reduces the level of pathogens, but they can't necessarily eliminate all of them. So it's not really an immune system per se, but the placenta contains a whole network of macrophages, and they look like this. They are amazing. These are white blood cells that engulf viruses and other pathogens. You can think of them as a big eating machine. These macrophages identify, surround, and engulf the foreign substance, and then destroy the foreign substance or cells. So these macrophages are also thought to clean the house in your body, in this case here in the embryo's house. And these cells get rid of the cells that are worn out or need to be replaced. So they also play a role in wound healing and regeneration. This is perfect. So we definitely need them here. Also, tissues are continually formed and broken down as the placenta grows and builds the umbilical cord. These macrophages migrate throughout the maternal side of the placenta to clear dead cells. On the fetal side, protection is from a special kind of macrophage known as Hofbauer cells. made by the fetus. They do the same as the one from the mother's side. Again, these macrophages are very important, and but how can a lot of viruses get past these defenses? There are a few viruses that can cross the placenta and get to the baby. Lots of viruses are carried by blood, but not all of them. The virus can make the right proteins that enable it to bind to the placental receptors. And because the placenta is maturing, it doesn't keep the same receptors throughout the pregnancy. So the virus has to be in the right place in huge amounts, and at this critical time when these placental cells are making the right receptor, only then the virus can enter. So, but then it also shouldn't be killed by the mom's macrophages or by the Hofbauer cells. So everything has to be just right for a virus to grow in the placenta. It's still a challenge for the virus. But good news, it is very rare. So more commonly, nutrients such as glucose, that is sugar, amino acids, and mineral ions, as well as water and oxygen, pass from the mother's blood into the fetus's blood in the placenta. Also antibody, they also pass from the mother to the fetus, so that the fetus is protected from the same disease as the mother. This immunity lasts for a short time, up to several months after birth. So, as we said, carbon dioxide and urea from the fetus pass in the opposite direction, and nutrients and antibodies come into the placenta. As you can see, the structure of the placenta also contains a large number of chorionic villi. So these are these little things here. So how does the placenta change over time? In the first trimester, it's establishing itself and growing. And once the placental cells get into the uterine wall, they encounter the mother's blood vessels and break them open. The placenta gets rid of the teeny tiny arteries that are usually there and creates a huge new one, which is kind of like a tunnel, like we see here. And that's how the mom's blood flow reaches the surface of the placenta. By mid-gestation, a liter of blood per minute is pouring onto the surface of the placenta. The mom's blood, as you can see here, never actually reaches or touches the baby. Only the placenta. Anything that the baby needs has to be transferred across the placenta. So the placenta needs to be fully functional for everything to go normally. In the second half of the pregnancy, the placenta just gets bigger and bigger. The most important change in the late gestation is that maternal antibodies can reach the fetal blood stream by passing through a layer of cells in the placenta. These are the antibodies that the baby has for the next 6 months of its life. So everything has got to be just right for the placenta to develop properly. So, congratulations, you have also finished the placenta. Now, let me ask you some questions. So, what are the 3 sacs called? The yolk sac, the amniotic sac, and the chorionic sac. What is the chorionic sac? The future placenta of the fetus. Is there also another part of the placenta? Yeah, many, but the most important one, the other one, is the maternal part. What are the functional units of the placenta? The villi. Which organ is the placenta? It is an endocrine organ. What does this mean? It's secreting hormones. What kind of hormones? Estrogen and progesterone. Why progesterone? It acts to maintain pregnancy, that's right, by supporting what? The lining of the uterus. And what does it help to grow? The placenta. What does it prevent? Right, the shedding of the lining. Very good. Why is this harmful? Yes, it would result in pregnancy loss. And what does it suppress? The ability of the muscular layer of the uterine wall to contract. Why are contractions harmful? Why is progesterone stopping this? Yeah, because they can start labor. What other hormone is produced by the placenta? Estrogen. Very good. When is its peak? Towards the end of pregnancy. What does it do? It acts to stimulate the growth of the uterus. So it makes a little house for the baby. So what does it stimulate? Estrogen also stimulates the growth and development of the mammary glands. Why is this helpful? Yeah, because these mammary glands will produce milk in the breasts during pregnancy. I mean, after pregnancy, hopefully. And they start a little bit before. Yeah. Why do we need milk? That's important for breastfeeding. And what does the placenta deliver? The placenta delivers nutrients and oxygen to the embryo. And what does it remove? It removes wastes and carbon dioxide from the embryonic blood. And what is it made of? Like, what does it contain? There are two things, or actually three. So it contains 2 umbilical arteries and 1 umbilical vein. What do the 2 umbilical arteries do? They carry blood from the uterus to the placenta. And what's the job of the umbilical vein? It carries blood from the placenta to the fetus. In addition to the transfer of substances, the placenta has 2 other main functions. Which ones? So the first function is it can act as a barrier between mother and fetus, preventing some harmful pathogens in the blood of the mother from damaging the fetus. And what's the second function? The placenta also acts as an endocrine organ, producing several important hormones during pregnancy. So what can cross the fetal barrier? Unfortunately, alcohol, drugs, nicotine, viruses can cross the placental barrier. Do you know 2 harmful viruses to the baby? The Zika and the rubella. Would you advise a pregnant woman to visit her neighbor who has Zika or rubella? No. Why? Yes, because pathogens in general can trigger spontaneous abortions or preterm labor. Can bacteria enter and cross the fetal barrier? Not easily. How does the immune system protect the fetus? So cytokines can they call immune cells to the uterus, and there are also the other ones. Macrophages, these are white blood cells. They identify, surround the foreign substance and then destroy it. What can also pass from the mother to the fetus so that the fetus is protected from the same diseases as the mother? Antibodies. Very good. What happens to the urea from the fetus? You know, I can't really go to the toilet, so yes, it is excreted across the placenta. How would you describe the structure of the placenta? The placenta contains a large number of chorionic villi. Does the blood of the mother touches the blood of the fetus? No. How do nutrients and urea get exchanged? Yes, via the placenta. Very well done.